I think for many children, an overemphasis on grammar that's inappropriate probably makes English lessons something you don't look forward to.
If you wouldn't mind starting about who you are and your work and your big achievements.
Big achievements. So yeah, I started out as a primary teacher. Well, actually started in secondary, but I soon gave that up on the day that I decided I wasn't going to do secondary on the day that a 12-year-old boy said, "How do you spell I?" And I said, "What do you mean, an I?" And he said, "No, I went down the road," or whatever it was. And I thought then, how can you get to being 12 years old and not be able to spell the word I? Even if you've got terrible problems, surely that's one you can do. Anyway, so I ended up in primary. I became head teacher, and I was English inspector in Gloucestershire. I did teacher training, degree courses, and PGC. They were school-based courses, but also, and I did Ofsted as well. That was part of the job, but I also write. So I'm a sort of teacher writer. That's what I do. And I work with schools, as probably most of you know, in this country and in Australia. We do a lot of work in Australia and other parts of the world where English teachers have gone to work in Hong Kong or whatever and have taken the work with them. So it's sort of spread rather strangely, just through dint of years of doing it, really. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Pie. Ruth, would you like to introduce yourself and your latest big achievement?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ruth Drury. I'm ex-primary teacher. Now I own a local newspaper, and I have 2 adopted children who inspired me to create my series of children's books, the Helpful Pants series, and both have been written and published during lockdown so far. There are more to come. There's my first was Too Many Pants, and that's all about emotions. And my second that came out last week is called The Angermometer. And they're just all about getting children in touch with that. So I guess my biggest achievement was I didn't really know how many to print, so I printed 1,000 of Too Many Pants, and then one evening, about 10 o'clock, my phone started pinging with sales. We looked up why, spoke to one of the people, and it had been recommended on a very large Facebook group that was very active at the time. And by the time I woke up at 7 a.m, I'd sold 1,700 copies in one night.
Oh wow!
I've never achieved it again, and I'm not really expecting that kind of level. So my understanding of how to sell is a bit skewed. But yeah, that was absolutely insane. But the problem was I had to then package and post 1,700 books. So that wasn't very fun.
That needs work on.
Yeah, my post office were happy, but not very happy.
Lovely, thank you, Ruth. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do in your achievements?
I don't know about achievements. So I'm Tim Eagling. I'm the director of Time Capsule Education. I was a primary school teacher for 20 years, and I come from a long line of primary teachers. Actually, I'm from Essex, and there's been a member of my family teaching in Essex non-stop. Well, it feels like non-stop, but there's been one of us for at least the last 120 years. And my wife is still a teacher. But I got out 4 years ago, and now I'm a pirate most of the time, or sometimes I hunt dragons, or fairies, or Viking. I'm a Viking. I much like Pie, I'm all about experiences and getting kids to get immersed into the thing they're writing about. I think the moments for me have really been not getting why my year threes couldn't write a pirate story. Because pirates are cool. Yeah. One particularly brave young lad said, "Yeah, but I don't know anything about pirates," and it was that kind of thing. Right? Okay, so we were going to do this. We're going to have to go and be a pirate. So when I'm not working in schools as a writing consultant, I'm living historian and historical interpreter, and I've worked for English Heritage as well, all over the country in castles and that kind of thing. So I'm living the dream. I get to do all the bits of teaching that I love without all the nonsense, and then every now and then I get to go and live in a castle for a few weeks and be a pirate or an archaeologist or something else.
Brilliant, thank you, Tim. And finally, last but not least, Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself and your big achievements? I can see you've got great merchandise there in the background. That helps us out.
Yeah, my lovely publisher made me a banner. It actually hides the dartboard. I'm not sure the dartboard's quite the right thing to have when you're talking to schools. I'm Jackie Marchant, and I write books about a boy called Dougal Daly. You can also see him in the background there. There's 3 of these in the series. They're published by Wacky Bee Books. And I've also written a book about a girl called Tom, who tries to sell her grandmother. And that's coming out later this year. I think I visited Zuzu's school a while ago, didn't I?
You did, yes. When I worked at Ivor, you came.
That's right. That was a really good visit. The children were wonderful, and I sold a lot of books. I think I sold about 120 books or something. So that was a really good visit for me. Yes, I suppose that's my achievements. I suppose is writing and having the books published. I love visiting schools, and I think it's really important that authors go into schools now and try and counteract this shift towards the importance of grammar and spelling, which unfortunately you're obliged to do, and talk about creative writing with the emphasis on the creative rather than the actual physical writing. Helping children make up stories is just wonderful. Really, really enjoy doing that because they have the most fantastic imaginations.
Brilliant, thank you. Maybe you and Ruth at the end of the meeting should exchange details. So I'm assuming you don't postage and package 1,700 books in one night.
Well, normally they're sold through bookshops and things, but I'm now, and also I sell them in schools, but now I am offering to sell them through my website, and I will be posting them, packaging them, and signing them as well. Going to sign them, but I haven't had orders for 1,700 as yet. I'd like to know what that Facebook page was.
Yeah, it was a bit scary because it was at the end. It had only been out for 4 days, the book, and so I barely had any sellotape in the house. You know, I wasn't expecting anything like this, so it was a big logistical nightmare, really.
Yeah, a nice nightmare to have, though.
Yeah.
No problem. So you clearly all, in your own right, have got some amazing qualities to offer teachers, parents, pupils, and I just wanted this opportunity to kind of bring it all together because I feel like you could all put your perspective on some of the questions that we've either spoken individually or ones that I know other people would like to know what your views are. So I'll start off with, in your opinion, what inspires children to write?
Well, I think we all write best about what matters to us and what we know about. So that means there has to be some sort of experience that the children are feeding off, whether that be a memory, some sort of shared common experience. For instance, things like, I've had kids, for instance, like writing about things like lying in the dark in bed and watching the lights go across the wall and hearing sounds in the night. We've all had that experience of being alone, listening in the darkness. So memory, but also we can create experiences in the classroom or at home. For instance, recently, well, not so recently now, but when we could visit schools, it must have been back in March, I did a bubble event. So you know those huge things where you make massive bubbles that look like lumber in Wales. And they were so excited. Went outside, they had to go, I had to go, the head teacher was out there. So you provide some sort of rich experience for the children, and then we come back inside. I'd taken some photos, we had them up on the screen, and then we were looking closely, thinking about looking at all the different colours, the different shapes, what the bubbles reminded us of, and etc. So we We can draw on memory, experiences. We can set up experiences, but sometimes you just get a great model. You get a text that gets them going. I mean, most people would know, for instance, Kit Wright's The Magic Box. That has never ever failed me. There is something about that poem. You can do it with adults, you can do it with 5-year-olds. That idea of having a magic box, and there can be anything that you like inside this box. And you don't really even need a box. My experience is you can just read it, talk about it, and they're excited to create their own magic box. So I think we write best about what we know about, and that's why Tim's, for instance, the research into the Vikings. Well, you can't write about the Vikings if you don't know anything. You could almost say the richer, the deeper the experience, the more knowledge they have. That leads to a deeper and richer and more committed piece of writing. So it's got to be based on some sort of experience, and it's got to matter to us. And again, that's the other side of the coin of reading. Some books we read and we don't. Now, what book don't I like? What's that one about the rabbits? Water shit down. Couldn't be doing with it. My dad had an allotment, and the rabbits are there to be shot and eaten. But other people absolutely loved it. And it's the other side of the coin of that business of when we're working in class, sometimes something we set up as a writing task, some kids really love, and others, they don't go for it. It doesn't mean anything to them. So that leads me to the fourth point, which is sometimes they just need space, maybe a week's warning, say next Friday, you're going to be able to write anything you like at all, absolutely anything. So have a think about it. And sometimes you get your best writing from those very open invitations to write. So we write best about what we know, what matters to us, memory, create experiences, exciting experiences, use a model, but every now and then just let them be free to write.
Lovely, thank you, Pie. Thank you. Ruth, Tim, Jackie, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is to read and to instill a love of books and comics and magazines. I think that's the most important thing, to read. I think no writer is not a reader. So I think that's the most important thing. And then to use your imagination. So read lots, use your imagination. I think with those two things, you can't go wrong, really.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's quite important that the children can write something they can relate to, and I was saying experiences, but I was thinking of a book that I used to read as a child, and it used to make me cry every time, and it was a really ridiculous part of the story that made me cry. It was just an animal had passed away, and the little girl in it said it doesn't huff anymore. And I remember feeling so touched by that, because I could picture you going up to a horse, putting your hand by its mouth, and it huffs on you. But of course, when it doesn't huff anymore, that's really sad. And I know that even as an adult, to be honest, it does kill me now reading that story. So it's locked away safe. It's too hard. But I think because of that, children can write about things they relate to, even if it is a negative thing. You can find positives. So like a lot of David Walliams' books sort of have negative aspects, like the grandpa's got Alzheimer's or things like this, but he spins it into a positive. So I think helping children to see positives in terrible situations can actually be very freeing for them and allow them to think positively about their experiences in their life.
Okay, thank you. Tim, sorry.
I think from an inspiration point of view, I think it's really important that kids see writers and meet writers and talk to people who enjoy the experience. One of the things that I've come up against time and time again in the last few years is the fact that kids don't actually enjoy writing. One of my favourite authors is Terry Pratchett, and one of my favourite things he ever said was that writing is the most fun you can have by yourself, and I totally subscribe to that. And I think it's really important that any writer, be them adult or child, connects with writers and kind of like gets the idea that it's fun and you can be enthusiastic. So being an adult around kids who you want to get writing, they have to see you writing, and you have to be able to enthuse and get excited about it as well, whether that's gathering cool bits of vocabulary, or keeping a journal with cool ideas in it to write things down, or just taking that opportunity to get visibly excited and enthusiastic about what we're about to do. Kids are like absolute emotional sponges in the classroom and at home. If you have a fear, give that aura of fear and dread, and this is going to be awful, then they automatically that sets them off on the wrong path. So I think it's absolutely crucial that the whole experience is something that's going to be fun. It's going to be hard work, and there are going to be challenges, but it's going to be something at the end of it we find enjoyable and satisfying.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So on that, you've spoken about what inspires children. My next question to you is, what do you think puts children off from writing?
What puts them off?
Yeah.
Well, it sort of relates to what Tim was saying and Jackie. And it's, whilst I love grammar, and I do think children should know what an adjective is, because they wanted to have a test, they had to make it very difficult. So children are learning all sorts of things which really they don't need to be learning, like the subjunctive. I think for many children, an overemphasis on grammar that's inappropriate probably makes English lessons something you don't look forward to, and possibly torturous, particularly because lots of teachers, the sad truth is, they aren't grammarians. They're not experts in grammar, and I would go as far as saying virtually every classroom I've been in the last 3 or 4 years, there are grammatical errors on the wall. So I think we're being asked to teach something that actually is there for the test, to do some measuring, but in terms of children's language development and becoming writers is potentially off-putting. The other bit which can be off-putting, of course, is if your handwriting looks awful. And some children are forced into doing handwriting too early when they haven't got the hand-eye coordination. It's really difficult, and it hurts, and it looks horrible on the page, and you can't really do it. So I think really what I'm saying is the skills, the grammar skills can be off-putting it's the grammar knowledge really, not so much a skill. Can be off-putting. Handwriting can be off-putting. When my kids were young, we used to buy them big scrapbooks, and I'd often, even when they were 7, 8, 9, I'd sit down and say, you tell me what to write and I'll write it for you. And I'd do the writing down, and then they would sort of go into a trance and make something up. And we always got really good composition from that, because you've got getting it down on the page. And there are some children who really struggle with things like spelling. And again, an overemphasis on correctness can actually stultify the imagination. So you end up with kids, I did this at school, if I was 7, I was thinking of the word enormous, I'd write big, because I could do big, but I'm going to hope in hell of getting enormous written down correctly, and then I get into trouble. So a misunderstanding of language development, realizing that for language to grow and to develop, children are inevitably going to be making mistakes, but that's all part and parcel of it. And if you think about talk, if every time a small child of 4 or 5 made an error in talk, they were corrected in the way that some teachers correct and parents correct children's writing, then we'd have a nation of people who didn't speak, because you wouldn't want to risk it. So I think all of those things are sort of part and parcel of what puts children off. But also you've got the whole business of, and all of us will have been in classrooms where this has happened, where teachers don't give the pre-teaching that's needed. And it links back to things like the research, having a good experience, etc. You can't write out of nothingness. There must be some donkey work done in order to develop an idea. And that's why things like the story mapping are so useful, because it gives kids time to map out a story and think about what might happen, maybe tell it, have a go at telling it before they move into the writing. So I think sometimes it's the grammar sometimes that has been foisted on us, which is inappropriate. If you haven't got neat handwriting and you're finding spelling difficult, that's potentially going to hinder what you're doing. And then if you're not taught writing, I mean, one thing we haven't mentioned is the whole, well, we sort of hedged around it, teacher as writer. I think you were talking about that, Tim, teacher as writer. I learned that, well, it seemed so obvious to me when I started teaching. if they were going to write a letter, say from Goldilocks to the Three Bears, I was working with the sorts of kids who never got any blooming letters. It just seems so obvious to me to say, come on, let's have a go together first. And we do one together first, and things. If I ever missed that bit out, it's called teaching, really, I suppose. If I missed that bit out, if I didn't show them how to do it, then we were in trouble. So I think all of
We always
those.
do that in a math lesson. We always do that in a math lesson or a science lesson or something else. You never allow kids to do that without, showing them first.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of guesswork for some children, because going back to what Jackie was saying, if they haven't read enough, then they won't come to the writing with a feel for it, lots of ideas, vocabulary, sentence pattern. You can equate the reading and the writing. Kids who read a lot, generally speaking, are reasonably good writers. If they don't read very much, they're going to find it really hard.
Yeah, I completely agree with the point about the grammar. I think it's really sad that children have to concentrate on grammar. I was asked to judge a writing competition, and it's so sad when you look at this writing, and the kids seem to think that they have to have at least 10 adjectives for every noun, and every sentence has to start with I don't know, what's it called, a frontal adverb, whatever it is. I've never even heard of those things, and it's not good writing. I spoke to an editor who said that their job is to undo all this stuff that the children are being taught is good writing, because it's not. But I would say that I would take the writing out of creative writing and concentrate on the creativity. And remember, stories can be told, they can be acted, and they can be drawn. So allow kids to draw or to act or just to tell their stories. When I do workshops, one of the first things the kids often ask me is, are we going to have to write? And I say, no, you don't do any writing in this workshop. And they're so relieved. And then they come up with all these fantastic stories, which they can go write down if they want to, or they can draw them or make a cartoon or something like that. You don't have to write in order to write. Also, when children do write, I say, forget spelling and grammar, just write your story. You can go back and correct that later. And that's how authors work. We use spell check. You get those little red wiggly lines, and that does it for us. So, yeah, it's not as important. Yeah, you do have to learn the technicalities of writing. That is important. And you have to learn about grammar, because that's important when you learn another language. But you cannot tie that up with creative writing. They're two separate things.
Thank you for watching. I hope you found it enjoyable and useful. In the comment box below, please put a question or comment about the video. To grow our community more and help other teachers out there, please subscribe to the channel and share our posts and videos. Thank you.